The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad won a symbolic victory today after rebels started withdrawing from the heart of the city of Homs. After nearly 2 years of a government siege, civilians and rebel forces began to leave the old city on buses, taking them to anti-regime territory. The evacuation of opposition-held parts of the western city comes under the terms of a deal that hands control back to the government less than a month before presidential elections. Well, here in the House of Commons earlier, during Prime Minister's questions, the Labour MP Anne Clwyd challenged David Cameron to show Britain had not forgotten the people of Syria.
100,000 people are already dead in Syria. Others are dying as we are here today. They need help desperately. We've talked about humanitarian help. We haven't crossed borders. What on earth are we doing about it?
Well, the Right Honourable Lady is right to raise this. The answer to what we're doing about it is that Britain is the second largest bilateral aid donor in terms of humanitarian aid going into Syria. And so we are helping to feed, clothe and house people, both in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Jordan and elsewhere. I think she raises the important point about getting aid into Syria. More is being done on that, but it is extremely difficult because of the security situation. But we'll continue to do what we can.
Well, let's discuss this further now. I'm joined by Jon de Cook, a Belgian journalist based in Beirut, and Nabila Ramdani, who's a journalist and Middle East expert. Nabila Ramdani, to you first of all. Homs was once dubbed the capital of the revolution against President Assad. So how significant a moment do you think the evacuation is today?
Well, it is a very significant moment indeed, because amongst the horror of the worst civil war of this century by far, this is at least a cause for limited optimism. Limited because in the short term, rebels are being released with light weapons. Civilians are getting some respites from the constant shelling from Assad's forces, the shelling they had to endure for months and indeed years. And also that means that lives are being saved in the short term. But of course, this is a military victory for Assad, who is widely viewed as a mass murderer who uses chemical weapons against his own people, including thousands of children. And it is quite extraordinary that the United Nations managed actually to broker this deal, given the depths of hatred between forces loyal to Assad on the one hand and indeed the insurgents on the other hand.
Jon de Cook, there in Beirut, this was a UN brokered deal, but do you agree with Nabila Ramdani that for rebel fighters it will feel like a defeat?
It feels like a defeat, obviously, and people on the rebel side, also here in Lebanon, are obviously not very happy today. On the other hand, the whole deal it's enough of a face saver, the fact that they can leave with their arms, that it wasn't a military defeat on the battlefield as such. There's enough there so they can explain it away almost. So there's certainly a feeling of grief and of anger that the Assad regime got away with this, actually, because according to the UN resolution, they were supposed to let humanitarian aid into the old city of Homs, which they didn't do. So they completely ignored the UN resolution. But still, the remaining rebels and some civilians, well, they managed to survive. So it's a difficult one, and the feelings are quite complicated. But you're right, it is a symbolic victory for the Assad regime, but not a 100% victory, definitely.
So, Nabila Ramdani, to a certain extent, a face-saving exercise, but what do you think it means for President Assad's ability to hang on to power?
Well, I think beyond the UN diplomatic effort, what this shows is that Assad used very well-established tactics to evacuate the rebel, which again show the level of barbarism involved. And it's effectively, the tactics include starvation, literally forcing the enemy out of Homs, surrender to starve tactics, preventing food and other essential supplies from getting to them. But in the run-up to a forthcoming presidential election on the 3rd of June, which he is tipped to win, of course, this victory will further consolidate his control over the country.
And Jon de Cook, of course, many of the fighters swore that they would never leave. To what extent do you think there's a sense of anger at the that the rest of the world has allowed this to happen, has allowed the situation to have got to this stage?
Well, unfortunately, one must admit that that feeling of anger has been there in Homs since February 2012, which is already over 2 years ago. Homs was actually, it signaled the start of the complete military escalation of the Syrian revolution from the part of the regime side. February 2012, there was the famous siege of the neighborhood of Baba Amr in Homs, in which, unfortunately, Marie Colvin, the American journalist working for the Sunday Times, unfortunately died, among many thousands of others. Well, that was actually the beginning of the regime using heavy artillery against civilian neighborhoods. After that only came the airplanes, and now we have the barrel bombings and the chemical weapons. But the escalation really started in Homs. So Homsis, as they are called, have been angry with the international community, and especially with the West, already for over 2 years. And a lot of them left today with the words like, look, nobody did anything for us. So yes, we had to leave because nobody was helping us.
Jon de Kock, thank you very much indeed for joining us there in Beirut. Thank you too to Nabila Ramdani, who's here with me in the studio. We appreciate it. Thank you.